work with what you know for sure, and then build out from there.
Welcome back to the Wild Business Growth Podcast presented by Hippo Direct. This is your place to hear from a new entrepreneur or innovator every single Wednesday morning who's turning wild ideas into wild growth. I'm your host, Max Branstetter, digital marketing dude at Hippo Direct, and you can reach me at max@hippodirect.com for help using your podcast as a marketing tool. This is episode number 97, and today's guest is Will Shortz. Will has been the crossword editor for the New York Times since 1993. He's also the author of over 500 puzzle books, is the owner of over 25,000 puzzle books dating back to 1533, is the owner of the largest table tennis facility in North America, and has appeared in How I Met Your Mother, The Simpsons, and even wrote the riddles for the Riddler in Batman Forever. As Bart says, eat my shorts. Enjoy the show. Alrighty, we are here with the Puzzlemaster himself, Will Shortz, the crossword editor of the New York Times since 1993. Will, how you doing today?
Real good, Max. Good to talk to you.
Great to talk to you as well. So we are maybe going to discuss a puzzle or two today, but before we get into that, I have to ask, do you ever get sick of puzzles?
No, never get tired of them. There was someone who once said that if you ever get tired of writing, that means you're tired with life. And I feel the same way about puzzles. They are so diverse. You know, there's word puzzles, math puzzles, logic puzzles, picture puzzles. There's always something. They always stretch you. You know, an easy puzzle will stretch a beginning solver. Say a hard puzzle will stretch an expert solver. I'm always learning something. And I love the people I come in contact with through puzzles. They tend to be smart, interesting, well-rounded, funny, people with flexible minds. So no, I will always enjoy this.
And it sounds like with that description there, you're just describing myself, so I appreciate that. And that's good that you haven't got sick of it. And if you look at everything you've done in your career and all that you've achieved, clearly there hasn't been too many times where you've taken a break from puzzles as far as your main focus goes. When you think back to the early years, can you think of the first puzzle that you ever did?
The earliest puzzle I can remember making was a maze for my older brother, 7 years older than me, and I gave him a maze, and he expressed no interest in it, wouldn't solve it. So that was too bad. The first book, the puzzle book I remember reading was one called We Dare You to Solve This. It was a paperback book of puzzles and from 1959. For some reason, my older sister had it. She kept it on her night table. When she wasn't around, I would borrow it and then put it back before she got home. And then I kept borrowing it. And then one time I never put it back, and it's been mine ever since.
So putting together puzzles that people didn't care about and then stealing other people's puzzles is clearly a great start to your career.
Yeah, why not?
When you got started doing puzzles yourself, just as someone who liked to complete puzzles, what do you think it is that drew you to puzzles in the first place?
Well, there's lots of things about puzzles. First of all, I love the creativity of puzzles, just using my mind. Puzzle solving gives you a good feeling. It's like, you know, we're faced with problems every day in life. Most of them we just muddle through as best we can with imperfect solutions and just hope we've done all right. And most problems in life we don't see through from start to finish. We sort of jump in the middle and then we bail out later on. The nice thing about a crossword, a Sudoku, or any kind of human-made puzzle, first of all, you see the process through from start to finish. And when you're done and you fill in the last letter or the last square, or you find the solution, you feel so proud of yourself. You feel a sense of accomplishment. You've put the world in order. And it's a great feeling we don't get much in everyday life.
It is. It's such a great feeling. And I think a lot of the puzzles, especially if it's a more smaller crossword or it's a jigsaw puzzle that doesn't have too many pieces, then it could be something that's not a crazy amount of time that it takes up, but it is such a great feeling, a feeling of pride there. You know, I recently reflecting as we're doing more and more puzzles lately, was reflecting how every single piece you put in and find the right spot for in a jigsaw puzzle, it's really a small win. It's almost like a metaphor for a larger project that you're taking on. So piece by piece, it's like these little moments of pride over and over again that these puzzles and games can provide.
That's true. If you're solving a tough Sudoku puzzle, usually it's hardest somewhere in the middle. And after you break it, that is, you crack it open, and there's a rush at the end because the last few squares are really usually quick to fill in, and you get a rush, a feeling of satisfaction that just comes in a rush, and that's great. You feel that also, I think, with a jigsaw puzzle. You know, you start with maybe hundreds of pieces, and it starts very slow. You know, you probably work the perimeter first, get that, and then you look at the most distinctive colors and fill those in. But it's very slow going. And as you get down to the end, you got, 10 pieces, 5 pieces. You rush to fill those last ones in, and it's just a terrific feeling.
It is. It's an absolute mad dash towards the end. And so I like to talk about IU. I may be biased because I graduated from IU. And one of the earliest things I learned about distinguished alumni from IU is not only did Will Shortz go to IU, he also created his own major and was the only person in the world to have that major. And they literally talk about this in orientation. So when you think back to your time at IU, because you and I had very very different majors. Most certainly did not create my own major. How did that come about in the first place? What was the major you created, and what was that process like of actually developing it, getting it approved, and moving forward with this incredibly unique major?
Yeah, well, my major was enigmatology, the study of puzzles or study of enigmas. IU has a program called the Individualized Major Program. If you're accepted, you can major in anything you want. When I was at IU, I was there from 1970 to 74. It was a new program. It had just started in 1969. My mother actually read something about it. I had been joking since I was a kid about majoring in puzzles when I was at college because I loved them so much. And it was haha, it was a joke. And then I found, well, maybe it's actually possible. So my junior year at IU, I took some independent learning courses through regular departments. Like I took a course on crossword construction with a professor in the English department. And every few weeks, I would create an original crossword and go into his office and sit next to him as he solved it and critiqued it. And that's how I made my first crosswords.
That's not a bad homework grading job on his standpoint.
Yeah. So I tried that out. I had a couple independent learning programs in my junior year, and then I took the plunge and changed my major from economics to enigmatology my senior year. And my senior year was devoted almost entirely to puzzles. I took courses on word puzzles, math puzzles, logic puzzles, a course on the psychology of puzzles, which was what's going through our brain as we're solving problems. Took a course on crossword magazines, and my thesis was on the history of American word puzzles before 1860. I had a research grant at the Library of Congress, and IU has a fantastic library. The IU library is practically my second home during my senior year.
I can imagine the stacks, spending so much time there. What was the reaction of your parents and the people close to you when you said, not only am I going to study enigmatology puzzles in college, I'm going to create my own major and I'm going to devote serious time to this and actually making a career of this?
Yeah, well, my mother was a writer and a creative type, and she liked the idea. My dad was more of the corporate type. He was a personnel director for our Donnelly Printing Company, and he looked more askance at the idea. But he thought, it's this phase that I'll go through. He always said puzzles are will make a great avocation, not a vocation. It's a hobby, something to do on the side. After IU, I went on to the University of Virginia School of Law, and I got a JD, but I never took the bar exam. When I graduated, I went to work as an editor at a crossword magazine company, and have never looked back.
So was it crosswords that pulled you in and kind of kept your attention along the professional standpoint, even in those couple decades before you got to New York Times?
Well, I've always liked any kind of puzzle. Crosswords actually came kind of late to. I was writing my own puzzle book when I was 12, and I still have all these creative types of puzzles that I invented. My childhood hero was Sam Lloyd, who's considered America's all-time greatest puzzle maker. He lived or worked from around 1870 till his death in 1911, and I just was fascinated by his work. After I graduated from law school, I worked for penny press puzzle magazine companies. Then there was this magazine called Games that started, and it was devoted to all kinds of puzzles and games. I was there for 15 years, and then have been at the Times since 1993.
So when you look at those years before you got the job at the Times, what can you point to as the biggest thing you did that positioned you to get this job, this super unique, super admired job at such a high profile publisher?
I'm only the fourth crossword editor at the New York Times. The first one was in 1942, and all three of my predecessors were older. My immediate predecessor was 77 when he died, and I got the job. I started when I was 41. One of the things I think that helped me, oh boy, there were a lot of things that helped me. First of all, I have the world's only college degree in puzzles.
There you go.
So that was good.
You could say you set yourself up for that.
And working for Games Magazine was great. I also founded the American Crossword Puzzle Tournament in 1978 and directed it every year. I think my age was actually a plus because the person who hired me saw that the puzzle world was moving into electronic age. I started in 1993. That was in the infancy of the internet. But
Yeah.
I think they could see that crosswords would be solved online, eventually. And it would be nice to have a younger person. And there's one other thing. There used to be a gathering of crossword constructors in New York City once a month to have lunch. You get together and talk about puzzles and talk about words and so on. It was all older people. Everybody was 50 and up, and the average age was 65 or 70. I was the one exception. They let me into their group. And I think the Times saw me as someone who could bridge the generations. I could keep the older solvers, but also bring in younger solvers. That's what I tried to do.
And you attended literal puzzle parties as part of it. I'm sensing a trend here. There's going to be more and more of these puzzle parties. So today, when you look at your workflow and how you make sure you get the puzzles edited out the door on time, what does it look like? How much time do you typically spend on a crossword for a given day? And can you just walk us through some of the basic steps for making sure that's ready to print?
Yeah, well, the biggest part of the job is actually looking at mail. I get more than 125 submissions a week, crossword
Oh, wow.
submissions a week, and then we can publish only 7 because there's only 7 days a week. So it's a tremendously competitive to get a puzzle accepted. When I started in 1993, it was basically a department of one. It was me. Now I have 2 assistants, and we're about to hire 2 more. The program has been, very successful. It's the crossword is now a very profitable part of the New York Times. It costs $39.95 to subscribe to the crossword online. More than 700,000 people have done this.
Oh, wow.
That's in addition to the puzzle being in the print edition and it being in best-selling crossword books and being syndicated to newspapers all over the country. So it's a very profitable business, and I'm proud of helping support the quality journalism at the New York Times by a profitable crossword. But let me get back to your question what's my day like?
Go ahead.
Every day is different. A big part of the day can be looking at submissions. Once a puzzle is accepted, I slot it for a particular day of the week. Monday is the easiest day of the week. Wouldn't call it actually an easy puzzle, but it's easy medium. That's where you should start if you've never solved crosswords before. And then the difficulty increases significantly up through Saturday when the puzzle is really hard. Sunday is a bigger puzzle, but it's like a Wednesday or Thursday in difficulty. So when a puzzle is accepted, it gets slotted for a particular day of the week. When I come to edit a puzzle, on average, about half the clues are mine. I'm a very hands-on editor. I can edit as few as 5 or 10% of the clues in a puzzle, up to 90 to 95%, depending on the puzzle maker's clue writing ability. I'm looking, first of all, for accuracy. Doesn't matter how interesting or good the clues are if there's a factual error in them. So I check everything that I'm not absolutely certain about. Then I'm editing for the proper level of difficulty and just freshness, sense of humor, clues that you haven't seen before, clues that will twist your mind in a fun way. Once the puzzles are edited, they're typeset. I send them to a group of test solvers, one of whom rechecks every word and fact after me. And then the puzzles go into production. And altogether, they're seen by about 10 other people before they appear in print. So there is virtually never an error in the crossword.
Oh, and now we have to knock on wood just to make sure. Now everybody's going to be looking for errors.
Yeah, well, they're always these things sneak through. I think in the last 12 months, I've had 4 or 5 mistakes. Usually they're seen by only 1 or 2 people. They tend to be small mistakes, and that's out of about 32,000 clues during a year. So it's a pretty good average. But
I was going to say that's a pretty good ratio.
Things do slip through.
I'm sure. How much time on average do you think it takes you to go through a single submission?
When I'm looking at submissions, a puzzle that breaks the rules, and there's some basic rules of crossword making. If they break the rules, I can tell that in a matter of seconds. A puzzle that is really good, I can determine in maybe a minute or 2 by looking at the theme, if there's a theme, and looking at the quality of the vocabulary. So puzzles in the middle that are the most time consuming. So I have to think about, is this a fresh theme idea? Is it consistently done? Is it fun? Would this be fun to do as a solver? If I like the puzzle's theme, then I look at the quality of the fill. Is it lively, juicy, colorful vocabulary that would be fun to solve? Or is it obscure and uninteresting, or maybe bland? You know, there's puzzles that are perfectly okay, but have a lot of short, vowel-heavy words that you see a lot in crosswords. So those are the puzzles that take the longest. If I like a theme, but I think part of the grid is not great, I will go back to the constructor and ask, can you rework this corner or this part of the grid to get the best possible fill for the solver?
There's kind of the clear-cut answers at the start of, okay, does this work with the rules of crossword puzzles, or is this just not going to work? And then it sounds like it comes much more subjective.
Right.
On the flip side of things, so on the puzzle doer side of things, I'm sure that's the official term for people that are working
Puzzle
on puzzles.
solver, yeah.
Puzzle solver. There we go. Yeah, solve versus do. I guess that's quite the difference there. So for the puzzle solvers out there, without obviously giving away any answers, what tips do you have that are some helpful things to keep in mind that could come in handy when you are solving a crossword puzzle?
Yeah. Well, a couple of things. First of all, if you're not a regular doer and you're interested in
Solver.
trying, right?
I'm just messing with you.
If you're not a regular solver, I recommend starting with Monday Times crossword. Also, there's a mini crossword, a 5x5 square crossword done by my assistant and colleague, Joel Faliano, that appears every day in the New York Times. That tends to be a little easier than the regular puzzle, but it has a nice, he's young, and the puzzle has a young vibe to it. So I recommend those. Whatever puzzle you do, fill in what you know for sure. Use the crossings to help you. And, you know, you don't have to know everything in a crossword. Usually you don't. But you use it's like tackling any problem in life. Work with what you know for sure, and then build out from there. And if you're solving a crossword and you've got, you know, a J or a Z or a W, look at the crossings on those letters, because those are distinctive. They're going to be more helpful to you than an A or an E, for example. Do the best you can. And if you are stuck, I recommend putting the puzzle aside and come back later. It's amazing how often that trick works. All you need maybe is one new answer or a different take on one answer, one clue in the puzzle, and you're off and running again.
It is amazing. I think that applies to so many things, no matter what problem you're working on at the time. Sometimes it just helps to take a little step back, a little break, and then come back fresh with it, whether
Yeah.
it's puzzles or something else. And when you take a giant step back and look at your career as a whole, what advice do you have for someone who has a very unique idea, or is you've exemplified kind of an extreme version of creating your own major, but what advice do you have for somebody that is super passionate about something and knows they'll have a ton of fun doing it and wants to make it their life's work, but it may not be so commonly seen in society?
Yeah. Well, if you are lucky like me, you can turn your passion into a career. Whatever your passion is, see if you can do it. If you can't make it your career, see if you can't make it your vocation, see if you can make it your avocation. But let's say you love comic books, throw yourself into that, and there are careers in comic books. You can make that work. And even if you have an everyday job like an accountant or something, maybe you can do comic books in your spare time. Do whatever excites you in life because we're only here for a short time. Enjoy yourself.
Imagine you started your own podcast. You're growing your brand, sharing your expertise, maybe even your terrible puns, and meeting fascinating people. That is awesome. Now, imagine all the hours you've lost every week due to the podcast's demands. Not so awesome. I am your podcast producer. Email me at max@hippodirect.com. Let's get to a fan favorite segment called the Wild Business Shoutout of the Week.
The Wild Business Shoutout of the Week!
Wild Business Shoutout of the Week. This is where we talk about a recent campaign, creative marketing approach that caught our attention. And speaking of puzzles, there is something Heinz Ketchup did in the puzzle world that was very, very clever. You mind sharing that example?
Yeah, it's done by Heinz in Canada. They have put out a 570-piece puzzle that is entirely Heinz red. That's it. When you're solving this puzzle, you have nothing to go on other than the shapes of the pieces because it's solid Heinz red. And there's a promotion for it. It's very clever. There's different ways that you can win the puzzle. There's 570 pieces, which is a takeoff on the 57 varieties of Heinz ketchup. And if you're interested, there's more information, I think, at Heinz.ca, something like that, or just Google it.
Close enough. The Google machine works. So I love that example. Well, I love and hate that example. I love that it was such a clever breakthrough campaign. It's perfect for the time, and
Yeah.
they are obviously on brand with the 57 and it all being the color of their ketchup. But I kind of hate it because that would be an absolute miserable puzzle. Imagine doing a puzzle that was all the same color, a jigsaw puzzle. It just sounds miserable, but they knocked it out of the park regardless.
Yeah, yeah. Well, as you say, this is perfect for this time when so many of us are stuck at home, especially with families. So this is something you can do with your friends and family, and it's something that's going to take you a while to do. So there's another reason it's good for this time.
It certainly will if you're looking for things to suck up your time. So only a little bit of time left. Let's wrap up with some rapid fire Q&A. You ready for it?
I'm ready.
All right, let's get wild. So you and your work have been featured in some of the biggest TV shows and movies out there. What is the most surprising feature that you've ever gotten?
Maybe How I Met Your Mother. I was on that around 10 years ago. They were doing a show where they needed some people for a snooty New York party. And so somehow they thought of me.
Oh, of
And not
course.
only was I
The
on How I
snootiest.
Met Your Mother, but I actually sang. And if you know anything about my singing voice, that's not something you want to hear.
They call you the singing master, right?
I also was a character in The Simpsons. So that was a big kick.
That's unbelievable. Yeah, you probably didn't see that coming when you started your first puzzle. How about table tennis? So in addition to being the puzzle master, in a way you're also the table tennis master as well. I know you own a table tennis center of yourself. You're an avid player. What is a single tip you can give us to improve your table tennis skills?
Uh-huh. Well, as you say, I am fanatical about table tennis. I play literally every day. I have not missed a day of play since October 3, 2012.
Wow.
Uh, right
Congrats on
now,
that.
my right now my club is expanding, and when we're done, we're going to have the largest dedicated table tennis facility in North America,
Oh my God.
one of the largest in the world. And how to improve your game? Yeah, well, I'd say first of all, go onto YouTube and search on table tennis instruction, maybe. Uh, that'll tell you how to hold a paddle and give you some basic tips on improving your game. A question I get asked all the time is, what's the difference between ping pong and table tennis? And they are the same. I say ping pong is the game, table tennis is the sport. What you call it is based on your mindset and how you approach the game. You know, if you're in your basement playing with your family member, that's probably ping pong. And if you go to a table tennis club, of course, that's table tennis.
It is. That clears up a lot. And then you also have the world's largest collection of puzzle books, over 25,000 puzzle books. What is I'm thinking of Indiana Jones here. What is the most unique puzzle book you have?
Wow. One that jumps to mind, I had the world's first crossword puzzle book published in 1925. That was actually a bestseller, so there were lots of copies. But it was published by Simon and Schuster, and it was the very first book published by Simon and Schuster. And Dick Simon and Max Schuster have inscribed the book to the very minute that the book came off the press, and they were said that. This book was going to usher in the crossword puzzle age.
There we go.
And by God, that's what happened.
They called the shot 70 years before you started. Well, Will, this has been amazing. Thank you so much for sharing your incredible story. Where's the best place for people to connect with you and check out your puzzles?
I am on the radio on NPR every Sunday morning. So you can search on NPR Puzzle and find your local station. And of course, I'm in the New York Times. I also direct the American Crossword Puzzle Tournament, so you can go to crossword-tournament.com, any of those ways. Or look up Westchester Table Tennis, and you'll find me that way too.
There we go. All right. We have a very intense duel in our future. Thanks again, Will. And then last thing, I usually end with final thoughts, but for you, I'm going to do final riddle. Is there a riddle, just a quick one-liner, something that you can think of that you want to leave us with?
Okay. Well, here's one I wrote when I was in college. Take the letters of the word elation, Elation, and rearrange them to name part of the human body.
So the answer to that riddle will be at the tail end of the episode, all the way after the music. So if you don't want to use Google and you aren't able to think of the answer yourself, hang on to the tail end of the episode after the music for the answer. Will, thank you so much for coming on the podcast and sharing your truly one-of-a-kind story. And thank you, wild listeners, for tuning into another episode. If you want to hear more wild stories like this one, make sure to subscribe to this podcast on your favorite app and leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. You can also find us on Good Pods, where you can find all the podcasts your friends, family, and other favorite people are listening to. In addition, you can dive into our marketing and business growth resources at hippodirect.com/blog and hippodirect.com/newsletter. That newsletter is the Hippo Digest, and it's your place for wild marketing ideas every single week. And of course, if you are interested in connecting on social media, come say hey on your favorite channels at the handles Hippo Direct and Max Branstetter. Until next time, let your business run wild.
Bring on the bongos!
Hey, Will, what body part do you get by rearranging the letters in the word elation?
All right, I'll tell you. The answer is toenail.